actually.
Okay. As opposed to a not weird Frankenstein noise? A totally normal Frankenstein noise? Yeah, a little, a bit.
Listen, what?
Yes. Okay, so this is a bad night for this announcement because we kind of got a little bit of a late start anyway, huh?
That one?
Yeah.
Okay. Making sure.
Yeah. Late start anyway. But here's my announcement. When I was a kid, my grandfather used to have this saying and it usually had something to do with somebody that was wearing clothes that were way too small for that particular person. He would say, "It looks like they're trying to put 10 pounds of potatoes in a 5-pound sack." And that is what we've been trying to do on Wednesday nights. Doing everything that we've been doing, there is no way to honestly finish really close to 8 o'clock. And so it pains me to say this, but we're going to have to drop Project Noon as an every Wednesday thing. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with that. I don't want to drop it as a concept. And I don't think I want to give a whole Wednesday night to it either, because that takes us away from a lot of Bible study. So I'm not sure what to do with that, honestly. It may end up being a video that I post on the GroupMe or in the Facebook page. I don't know, because I definitely want to look at those things, but we don't have time for it here. We just don't. Last week we were in really good shape, and we started the prayer pretty much right on time. Even like maybe 5 minutes late, and we were still here until like 8:20. Now, I love that. So here's the deal. It's like what we say with men's group. Men's group, Kingdom Men, is scheduled from 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock. It's officially over at 8 o'clock. You can stay till midnight if you want, like we've done in the past, and we've done that in the past, just standing around talking. I'm not in a hurry for anybody to leave, but the programmed service needs to end as close to 8 as we can to not put stress on our kids' ministry. So we are going to make that happen, and sometimes that may mean doing more of doing something with the prayers so that they're a little more concise at the end. I don't want to take less prayer requests. You know, that seems counterproductive. So I don't want to do that. But we are going to drop Project Noon, which will pick us up about 10 minutes or so. So in theory, the content, the Bible study, or like tonight, the apologetic stuff, will end around 7:20-ish or so instead of 7:30-ish or so. And that'll pick us up a little bit of time on the prayer. So I don't want it to rush through it, but we just need to be aware of the time. So having said all of that, we got a late start tonight, which didn't help my announcement. Plus, we've had so many people that have been out and stuff over the last couple of weeks. And yet this testimony time that we've been having has been phenomenal. Like every single testimony that we have heard has been something really special. And so I also want to take a minute right now and just see if there's anybody here who didn't get to share one yet that needs the opportunity to do that, because I don't want to shut anybody out of that at all. I also didn't warn Kirk about that, so we don't have a mic. But no, there's a mic. There's a mic. Our lovely mic assistant. So, for anybody who hasn't been able to be here in a couple of weeks, what we've been doing is testimonies really regarding discipleship. When I started doing this thing, whatever this thing is, God's way, there was a blessing for that. And that can be anything under the realm of discipleship. So, do we have anybody who needs to share something tonight? We would love to hear it. Moving on. Okay. And I'll say again what I did say Sunday. If you have something that's just too personal to share, like I get that, please come add a rock to our altar. Come up here and add to the altar, kneel there and say a prayer if you need to do whatever you need to do. If you're a person who's just not ready to literally share out loud, yes.
I actually do have one. Oh. Sorry, I
I need the
Can we get
microphone
mic
back.
I'm so sorry. I really didn't even realize that he's taking it away. I just was.
Okay, if you are one of those who is not comfortable sharing it out loud in front of everybody, now we would love to hear it. That's really what we want. But if you're not there yet and you need to write it out for somebody else to read or just for us to pass around, or if you want to record a little video of it or something, we'll do it that way. I just want to make sure that, because these testimonies have been so good, and I just want to make sure that we build the best altar that we can. Okay.
My testimony is about God's faithfulness, and they're in my new job, and He blessed me with an incredible job where I'm learning new things all the time. I'm helping people. I'm training people, so I still get to teach, even though I'm not in a classroom. So I get to teach without the stress of being in a classroom, which is awesome. And I'm around technology all the time, which most of the time I really like. But God is so faithful, and He is just so kind. And you were all with me when I just felt like I was drowning, trying so hard to please the administration at my old school, and never hearing a word of praise. And I was pouring out my soul and doing so much and giving so much, and really having like an incredible, like ending it with probably the most professionally excellent years of my entire teaching career, and then losing my job. So in this position, before I ever have a chance to wonder if I'm appreciated, my bosses tell me how much they value me and what a great job I'm doing. And there is one at my when they hired me, they have like a range of salary, and they didn't know what they were getting, so they kind of put me in the middle. And at my first year review, I kind of felt like, okay, they said all these really great things, maybe they'll bump me up to the top of it, like that would be really cool. Like, but they didn't, and that's okay. The praise was what mattered, knowing how they valued me was what mattered. But I never felt comfortable. I never felt like, I prayed about it a lot. It's okay, should I say something? Like, I know it's not wrong to advocate for more if you feel like you deserve a raise. I know it's not wrong to do that, but I prayed about it, and I didn't feel like I was supposed to. We prayed about it together. Somebody felt like I should, but I really didn't feel like I was supposed to. And then before my next year review, so it was like even at a really odd time, for other circumstances, they pulled me into the conference room and they said, well, we were going to do this later, but we want to do this now. We have just been blown away by how much value you've added to the company, that we will bump you up to like this number, which was the top of the range that they had originally said. Like, God did that. I didn't have to do that. Like, every step of the way. And God has just been so faithful. And every need has just been met because I've trusted God in it. And it's just such a blessing. And I'm so thankful. And even though today was super, super stressful because we didn't do hardly anything at all because of the snow, and now everybody's doing everything, and it's really super stressful, it's still great. So, God is good.
Amen.
There you go. God is good.
Yeah, don't forget your rock. Anybody else? Judah doesn't have anything? All right, moving on. It is, hey, if you're watching online, like I wasn't able to go home today and get my laptop, and I don't know my password to the YouTube account.
So if you know it, just text
So,
it.
yeah, if you know that, send it to me. But, like, I don't know if it's going to let me do comments and stuff. We'll see how that goes. I am successfully in the Facebook feed, so if you have comments there, you're welcome to. Huh?
If you not put it in your RoboForm?
This is the wrong laptop.
It's an online system, buddy. It's accessible everywhere.
It's late.
Okay.
It's really late. So I either will or won't be able to.
Hey, we're on. That's good. I
Okay.
don't have my preview screen back there, so I have no idea what's going on back.
Tonight is a apologetics night, so here is Mr. Suter.
So for the last several weeks, we've been working on our arguments about how do we know God exists, right? So we started off. We're going to hit the ground running pretty hard here because I now have 21 minutes to deal with the most complicated of all things, really.
Go to 7:30. We'll make it work.
There's our 5 basic categories that we talked about. First one being the ontological argument, which was our philosophical argument, right? Basically, the concept of God is the greatest thing that we can imagine, and if you can imagine something and something exists, that something would be greater than what you could imagine, but God is the greatest thing you can imagine, therefore God exists. Okay, that kind of philosophical argument, we went over that. And then we have the cosmological argument we went over last time, how the universe began. We talked about the Big Bang and a bunch of things like that. Basically, the concept being whatever begins to exist has a cause, and the universe began to exist at one point, therefore the universe has a cause.
But it's ready.
It is ready.
It's review anyway, so now we're getting on to the things we're doing today. So we're going to start off with the teleological arguments. Okay, it's a fun little word to say. And we're going to focus on a particular part called the anthropic argument. We're back on, good. So the design of the universe to support life is the anthropic argument. And then the teleological itself is the design of life in general. So from the teleological argument in the nutshell, like we've been doing with everything else. 1, every design has a designer. The universe is a highly complex design, and therefore the universe has a designer. Okay, often called the pocket watch argument. Okay, so if you saw a pocket watch laying on the ground in the middle of on a beach or in a forest or something, right, and you walked by and you picked it up, you wouldn't think it just sprang into existence out of nothing, right? It obviously is a complex mechanical device that somebody designed and built and all that stuff. Again, the universe is a highly complex design and has a designer. So it's the study of the evidences of design or purpose in nature. Is your favorite subject?
That's my favorite so far.
Your favorite so far?
This is
Awesome.
the one I can wrap my head around the most. So
Cool,
okay.
cool.
Yeah.
This one is nice.
It's also the most fun word to say.
Yeah,
Which I think
teleological.
is really cool.
Teleological.
What would be the more common phrase that people may have heard in the last 3 or 4 years?
Intelligent design, basically,
Yeah.
is the general construct of it. We get to use big words on this night, so we like our big words.
Sorry.
For discipleship.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
In this section, we're going to discuss a particular branch, the anthropic principle. So it's basically a scientific observation that states that the universe is precisely tuned to support life on Earth. In fact, it's tuned in so many ways to such a perfect degree that it could only logically be the result of a designer. Okay? Often called the fine-tuning argument. And even those that don't apply a godly source of the fine-tuning still cling to the fine-tuning argument. It's a very valid argument. What they try to do is claim that the fine-tuning is a result of other things and other than God. And what we're going to show is that the combination of it in such a scale can only be derivative of God. So we're going to deal with it in the form of what's called anthropic constants. So basically, key features we're just going to pick up on and nitpick just a little bit and talk about these things that together paint a bigger picture. So constant number 1 being the oxygen level of our atmosphere. Okay? Who knows the approximate oxygen level of our atmosphere?
1.
21% is the given average, yeah, exactly.
I was I was in there punching.
You were saying 1 atmosphere, not 2 atmospheres.
Yeah, it was a
right?
question.
Exactly.
It was a question.
I understand. Okay. So, so this 21% of oxygen in the atmosphere is what basically makes life possible. If the concentration moves up to 25%, who remembers like when they started doing the space exploration stuff, and they had the problem when they over-oxygenated the space capsule and it caught fire and burned up the astronauts, right? It's because it wasn't that long ago when we realized that pure oxygen in the atmosphere was extremely flammable, okay? And if the oxygen level gets up above about 25%, you start getting just random fires breaking out all over the place, okay? Now, if it goes down to 15%, we start suffocating to the point of it's like taking, at 15%, it's effectively, you're getting 1 breath out of 2. No running. It's almost like an ideal concept, really.
Exactly. Yeah.
Slow things down.
Yeah. I can't run.
There'd still be that guy that was,
I wish I could run, but I just can't. It's not safe.
So, concept number 2, the atmospheric transparency, okay?
1.
Okay. Well, we'll allow you to assign a value to it. That's good. Okay.
Just want to be part of the conversation.
So if the atmosphere was less transparent, that is, or more opaque, so if we couldn't see as well through the atmosphere, kind of like a foggy day, if the atmosphere was foggy, not enough solar radiation could penetrate the atmosphere, and the solar radiation is important because it warms the surface of the Earth, right? And it allows plants to go through photosynthesis, which converts carbon dioxide into oxygen, and we all get to breathe, okay? So it's very important that the atmospheric transparency itself is correct. If it's more transparent, who remembers the thing back in early 90s, late 80s about the ozone layer burning off? We had a hole, right? And they talked a lot about what happens if you have a more transparent atmosphere. Yeah, so so effectively the issue is that all that solar radiation can penetrate, and the Earth becomes a massive desert, effectively, which is very much so, and increased cancer risk and stuff like that. It gets pretty epic. So, number 3, the Moon-Earth gravitational interaction. Now, this is actually one of my favorites out of all of them, because the Moon is so epically awesome. So, the Moon and the Earth work together in a gravitational pull system. And first of all, who knows what causes gravity? Mass creates gravity, right? But do we know how? We got an awful lot of ideas. We have no concept of how gravity actually works. Yes, exactly. So when a guy tells me that we evolved from amoebas, I'm like, okay, that's great. Explain gravity to me, because I can observe it right now. Okay. It's not great. We can define it, but we can't tell you why it occurs. But anyways, so the Moon, its interaction with the Earth, and the Moon, is the Moon moving towards or away from the Earth? Does anybody know? Slowly moving away from the Earth, about 1.5 inches a year. Okay, roughly at this is great. It's roughly at the growth rate of your fingernails. Is how fast the Moon is moving away from the Earth. Yeah, very slowly.
So I'm losing a little bit of weight every year because of that, right? Is it the other way? Is it backwards?
I don't have time for that incredibly complicated construct you just ran into, because it's a duality issue. Anyway, so if the Moon had a greater gravitational interaction with the Earth, the tidal effects on the ocean and the atmosphere, and actually the Moon slows the Earth down. The rotation of the Earth is slowed down by the Moon, yeah. And if without the Moon, that level of gravitation, the Earth would spin faster. And if the Earth spins faster, you get more wind and stuff like that. And the planetary orbit gets unstable. So the Earth actually would start to wobble way more than it does now. And what that does is create all sorts of chaos
I bet.
in climate, yeah. The whole thing falls apart effectively. So, constant number 4, the carbon dioxide level. Now, roughly the carbon dioxide level in the atmosphere is about what, you know? It's really low, actually.
1.
Yeah, it's like 0.04%.
I was a little bit high.
You were a little high, yeah. Yeah, yeah. That's roughly the level of argon in the atmosphere is 1. So you know
Well,
that.
obviously.
Yeah, yeah.
But we weren't talking about that.
Yeah. So, if the CO2 level was higher, okay, it causes a runaway greenhouse effect. Okay, so the atmosphere starts to store all that solar energy that comes in, and creates an epic heat level problem. Yes, effectively, yes, we'd be mush. If it's lower, then the problem is that the plants basically start to suffocate. And it doesn't take much because we don't have a whole lot anyway. So if the plants are suffocating,
That changes our oxygen level.
that changes our oxygen level, and then we suffer as well. So it all goes to chaos. All the food problems. Yes, yes. So gravity itself. Now, if the gravitational force was arguably altered by this percentage, which we can all say is a very small level, right? The problem is that the gravitational force, if it's altered by that, the sun can't hold itself together against the energy forces inside the sun, and the sun basically evaporates.
I'm pretty sure that happened by accident.
We are so lucky.
Dialed in on the money. Yeah, there are several hundred, and I just picked some ones I like. Now, gravity is things are attracted to each other, right? And centrifugal force is things are pushed away from each other due to rotational forces, okay? This is actually part of that interaction between the moon and the Earth. So the Earth's rotating, the moon's going around it. It has a centrifugal force that is pushing out, but the gravity of the two options is pulling in. So it's a balance of that.
Wow.
So if the force increases by any degree, basically your planets fall apart, and nothing can be held in orbit around the sun.
Like each specific little point is so meticulously, intensely complex, but they're all just a piece of a meticulously complex, bigger
A little
system.
bitty piece of the massively complex pocket watch, right?
When you start to look at this, you go like, oh yeah, I'm sure the universe could have happened randomly, and then it's like, wait, actually think
Yeah,
about it.
yeah, could it?
Every single
And-
little thing that had to happen for life to exist, period.
And one of the reasons why it's so intensely complicated in that, and why these things are so important, is because they all interact with each other.
Yeah.
You know, the oxygen level and the nitrogen level and the carbon dioxide level and the argon level. Okay, all that.
They
stuff.
don't just coexist.
Exactly. They
Yeah.
all have a very specific application. Number 7 being the rate of expansion. Now, we talked about it a little bit this last time with the cosmological argument and the redshift, right? Remember the redshift? We were talking about NASCAR.
Yeah.
Yes, okay, good. You remember that, I know.
I do.
Yes, okay, good. So if the universe had expanded at a rate 1/millionth more slowly than it did, the expansion would have stopped and the universe would have collapsed in on itself. Okay? And you wouldn't have been able to form any stars because the rate of expansion was too slow. If it goes any faster, the matter is not dense enough to allow you to form galaxies and stuff like that. And we talked about last time how they were able to work out the math for this before they even discovered the galaxy seeds and all that stuff, the things that make this, that we know mathematically that this works. That stuff all dials together. And so the interesting problem is that in that rate of expansion, if it goes any faster and the children in the back aren't tearing themselves apart.
I feel like there's some centrifugal force happening back there.
It's a centrifugal application. So effectively, yeah, if this rate of expansion varies at all, it doesn't exist, period. The whole thing just falls in on itself. Now, what's interesting now, due to that rate of expansion, you know, a lot of theories will say that the universe is expanding and collapsing and expanding and collapsing. But we can see right now that the universe is actually spread too far apart. There's not enough gravitational pull for anything to come back to the middle. You should let that update, I'm sure. That's
Yeah,
one of the things.
yeah, why not?
So, number 8, the speed of light. Now, the speed of light in physics, I won't bore you to tears over this, but basically the speed of light is related to everything, one way or another. The E equals mc squared, very powerful stuff. We talk about Einstein and all that stuff. The 299,792,458 meters per second. If there's a slight variation in this, because you can take the math, we have the math and the variables that explain kind of the physics of the world around us. If you take that speed of light and you tweak it a little bit, it all goes to pot. The whole thing falls apart, and it's ridiculous. Yeah, and you vary it. It's, yeah, you can't have a hyperdrive at that point. How are you going to bend space and time if you can't depend on this? So, number 9, the water vapor level. Okay, so the level of water in our atmosphere is very important too. It's at about 1, pretty close. Okay. And if you increase that at all, you get this runaway greenhouse effect, kind of like the CO2 thing that causes temperature to support. But if it's too low, you have an insufficient greenhouse effect, and the Earth cools, and everything is Antarctica. Okay.
Well, and the interesting thing about the water vapor and the CO2 that always blows my mind is they have mechanisms built in to correct either way. The Earth is self-correcting in a lot of these factors.
Very much so.
Over time, and there's all these different things that contribute to raise the CO2, to lower the CO2, and plant life and atmospheric temperatures and atmospheric CO2, like all these things work together. If it goes too far one way, to pull it back. It's insane how many of these
There's a self-corrective system that the Earth basically runs on that helps keep all this stuff in balance. So as one gets more extreme than this, the ice at the poles is a good example. The storage of fresh water changes there's enough fresh water in the poles to change the salt level of the ocean by large amounts, and the ocean is big. It's a big place. I
don't know if you knew this.
Okay.
The ocean's big.
Ocean's big. There's a lot of salt going on there.
Write that down.
So, number 10 actually is about a cool planet called Jupiter, right? And Jupiter is kind of like it's a revolving force field for us, effectively. So Jupiter exists out in the atmosphere, or out in the solar system, and what happens outside our atmosphere?
That's probably a good thing.
I hope so.
Its gravitational pull is such that it pulls in basically most of the debris in our solar system and absorbs it before it can get to us. Now,
It's like a lint brush.
yeah,
Okay,
it's more like a Hoover. Vacuum, effectively.
It's like a gold.
So this is Jupiter here, and you guys have seen pictures of Jupiter. You see these dark spots that are on Jupiter, kind of towards the bottom there? These guys here that I'm pointing to. These dark spots are caused by comet fragments that hit the atmosphere. Each one of those is larger than the Earth.
Well,
Okay? It's huge. Now, it's probably been a while since you guys were in school, so I wanted to show you this, because this is the relative dimension of our planets. Okay? This is their actual size comparison. So the Earth being the third rock from the sun, right? So you see Jupiter there.
TV show.
See how big Jupiter is?
Yeah.
And what's interesting about that
It's not a planet anymore.
is it just soaks up so much. Yeah, I didn't bother putting Pluto on the end. It was so small. It's a microplanet now, right? Because
just a
us
block
as
of ice.
mankind decided, hey, this is
Yeah.
If you include Pluto,
Just a block of ice in the middle of
Okay, whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, stress.
no worries about Pluto. Okay, he's a good dog. We don't worry about it. Anyway, so Jupiter in and of itself, as a planet, which effectively it's a gas giant, right? There's no actual surface to it. Jupiter is so big, it has on its surface basically 2.5 times our gravity. So if you could stand on the clouds of Jupiter, you would weigh 2.5 times more than you do here. So if you're 100 pounds here, you're 250 pounds there. It is ginormous, and it just sucks everything in.
Wow.
So,
Going to Jupiter. All the women thought. Women know.
number 11, the Earth's crust. So we all remember the core and the mantle and the crust, right, from school. So the crust itself, if the crust itself is thicker, it actually stores too much oxygen and we suffocate. Okay? If the crust is thinner, then you have problems with more volcanoes, more earthquakes, because everything moves a lot easier, right? It doesn't hold in those problems, which makes life very problematic. And then you have 12, the Earth's rotation itself. So, like we talked about, the moon is a brake on the Earth, and the rotation of the Earth, the issue being is that if you increase the time period of that rotation, you get too great of a temperature difference because you're slowing down in the sun exposure and the radiation and all that. You dramatically increase your exposure to that radiation. Say it one more time.
I said too cold at night.
Yeah, and you have a much longer night. Yeah, so I mean, go to Alaska when it's nighttime for 3 months. It doesn't feel as fun. But if the rotation period is shorter, if the Earth starts spinning faster, what happens is you get these wind velocities that make hurricanes look like a minor windy day. It's really incredible, and it takes to the period if the Earth spun in such a way it was 5 minutes faster or 5 minutes slower, you have a genuine problem.
Wow.
Now, number 13. So we know that the Earth doesn't sit straight up and down in its rotation, right? It's at a tilt. Does anybody know the tilt?
23 degrees.
Good job. Okay, 23
I was
degrees.
just about to say that.
That's fine.
You're gonna have to let him answer every once in a while. All right.
No, he's fine.
So again, if you alter that tilt, you change the orientation to the sun, right? And you change that time period because the tilt is related to our long summers and fall period and spring period and all that stuff. So when you start messing with the tilt, you increase the scale of that effectively so that things become much hotter or much colder. And the swing is much more
There's no
extreme.
tilt, there'd be no season.
And there'd be
And
no
the
poles.
tropics would just be scorched to death.
And there'd be no Antarctica or Arctic.
Yeah, and the poles would be where the tilt is too much. You have these massive
Yes.
seasons that would.
So, number 14, atmospheric ionic discharge. It's a very fancy word. You know what that means?
I have no idea.
Lightning.
We
Okay.
ion.
It's atmospheric ionic discharge. It's lightning. It's a fun way to say lightning. So, if the instance of lightning, just the amount of lightning that occurs, because lightning is one of our primary fire starters in the atmosphere and in the environment. So, if we significantly increase the amount of lightning, we get a lot more fire.
Especially.
On top of that, though, if it's a lot lower, the problem is significant because what lightning does when it strikes the soil is it fits as nitrogens into the soil. It takes nitrogen out of the atmosphere and fits it in the soil.
Of course it does.
And it's a big difference. It's not like a little bitty thing.
It's like God's miracle grow.
It is.
I mean, there wouldn't be plants without that.
Like here, right.
Exactly. The 15, the seismic activity. So if there were more earthquakes, the loss of life would be greater. But if there's less earthquakes, see what a lot of earthquakes do is they, like tsunamis and stuff, the waves that occur in the oceans from the earthquakes, all that does is it scoops nutrients out of the ocean and throws it onto the shore. Okay? And what that does is that allows you to cycle that nutrient cycle out of the ocean back into the plants and stuff like that. It's wondrous. Plus, it all gets sucked up into hurricanes and things of that nature, which pull all that moisture out and then dump it onto Florida, okay, which causes Florida to be green.
It is very good.
And everything would be great if people didn't want to live right on the ocean, because those problems wouldn't really be that bad.
So, we're moving along pretty good. We're going to get there. So, consider the sun. So, the sun's distance from the center of the galaxy. Our sun is positioned thousands of light years from the center of the Milky Way. It's near one of the edge of the spiral arms. That's very important because the center of the Milky Way galaxy is highly radioactive. It is a nuclear reactor that's just open to the world effectively.
And the stars are much denser.
Yeah. Kind of like a solar system made up of everything a mile around Chernobyl. It's wonderful. Now, the sun's mass is not too much, because if the mass of the sun were a small percentage greater, it would burn too quickly. It would have too much fuel, and it would burn too fast and erratically. because it's like when your fuel mixture is too hot in your engine.
Yeah.
Okay. While it ignites erratically in that because it can't get the compression ratio right. If the mass is too small, you get solar flares and stuff like that. So if it's a little bit smaller, we get a lot more solar flares, and solar flares are outrageously disruptive. They will cause a lot of future problems, but we already have problems with satellites and stuff like that being taken out by solar flares, and it really messes with a lot of stuff. Kind of like active EMPs. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's like active EMPs. Now, the sun is actually the primary source of metals. So suns, when a sun forms, it's responsible for basically spewing metal into the area around it, which is used to make the planets. Okay, that's where the metals in the planets come from. Now, only 2% of the stars that we can figure have enough metal content to actually form planets. And too much metal in a star allows too many planets to form, creating total chaos. But if there's too little, you don't get planets that form safely.
We also wouldn't have
Fairly small barrier.
the magnetosphere.
And,
One of my favorites.
yep, the magnetosphere stuff.
Is that on your?
That is not, because we're clicking on into what are the chances right this second. If you want to talk about magnetosphere real quick, you got 30 seconds.
Okay. Nothing could live on the Earth if we had too much radiation. The sun puts out a tremendous amount of radiation.
Mm-hmm.
And we're protected because we have a magnetic field around the Earth which diverts the most dangerous kinds of radiation away from the surface, which we can only have because the Earth has an active solid metal like core that spins.
Mm-hmm.
Well, very few other planets have, like Mars, we'll never be able to actually make it livable because the core is inert, it's dead, and it'll never have a protection from that radiation. So if we didn't have an active core, there'd be no life on the surface of the planet.
Yep.
So it keeps specific types of radiation from getting.
Yeah, it's a powerful
Study it.
magnetic
It's out
field
there.
around the Earth, and it does. It diverts the really exotic
the real
radiation.
weird?
Like
What'd you say, Glenn?
X-rays, gamma rays, stuff like that. We get very real on the surface.
Yeah.
He would like to know how we know this.
Like,
Well, how
you
do
were talking
people,
about
how
how
do
do
scientists
scientists even know it?
You can
You're
observe
talking about Jupiter, other planets. How do you know so much about Jupiter? How do we know, like people in As general? people.
Well,
do
we
that
know
Mars
we know
is-
obviously as much as we can know, but we have sent a number of satellites out into our solar system and been able to take direct samples of Jupiter and stuff like that, up close photos. That allow us
really
on
insane.
different spectrums to, for instance, see whether or not there is land inside Jupiter, or if it's just gas all the way through and things like that. It also has to do with how light interacts with the planets. The gas planets, the light does pass through the planet to some degree, and we can tell that versus the light being absorbed and having to go around.
And like the
things of
probes
such
on
nature.
Mars' surface can take those
Yeah.
readings.
Plus, you
and
can
us
tell
what
the
they're
What's getting in?
getting on the surface.
the way that planets interact with the environment around them, and like Saturn and its moons and stuff like that. We can watch how the moons of Saturn rotate around Saturn and how they're interacted.
Any planet that has an active magnetosphere has aurora borealis. So we've observed aurora borealis on Jupiter, Saturn, and some of these other ones that do have that active spinning core, but Mars doesn't. You know right there,
Things of such nature.
because it's
Now,
part
is a
the
little bit of
generation.
it inferential? A little bit of it's inferential. Okay, yeah, because we haven't been out to Neptune, okay, and pulled core samples and done a lot of stuff out there. We could land on Neptune next year, and we'd be like, oh, this is totally different than we thought it was. Okay?
Hey, can I tell you something too? Do you remember studying what Kent taught us the other day? We were talking about, well, maybe you guys haven't been into the Leviticus stuff. You know, back in when they were talking about the men that God gave the knowledge how to do certain things.
Mhm.
God does that to certain people.
Mhm.
They have the ability to learn this stuff that just seems infathomable to us. But He's given specific people things to allow us to see His magnificence and His glory.
Amen.
God
And
has
to
made
expand His
this
glory, yeah.
for us to say, wow.
Because effectively is really, science is genuinely us trying to understand how God physically made this place.
Absolutely.
That's inherently what science
Yeah,
is.
as
That's how it
the,
started.
as the word says, the heavens declare His glory. Well, the only way for the heavens to declare His glory is for us to have some understanding of what the heavens are.
Right.
and what's going there. So he provides ways to get at that. And he's talking about legit science that, like you said, yes, some of it is inferential, but some of it is
But a lot of stuff's
it's easy to see. Yeah.
based on other knowledge that you have.
Yeah, inferential is not bad.
No,
Yeah.
it's
It
absolutely
can be
not.
totally
And it doesn't
logical.
mean it's
an
not
educated
legitimate either,
guess,
just
basically.
because it's inferential.
Yeah.
So real quick, we'll just talk about the odds. Did you have a question, Ryan? Is that what that was?
No, but why are we exploring space whenever we fully haven't explored our oceans?
Well, perhaps we should go both directions. It doesn't mean we have to limit one to do the other. We could go both ways.
Well, one of those is just,
Now,
How do you know?
the ocean seems way scarier than space, personally. So.
it's actually
Absolutely.
The pressure underwater.
It's just as hard to explore the bottom of the ocean, if not harder,
Oh,
to
yeah.
get stuff out in space.
Exactly.
So what are the chances?
So, roughly, the chances of the universe randomly coming together due to this Donald Page of Princeton is 1 out of 10 to the 124th, which is 1 in that. Okay? It's a bunch of zeros.
Which is what particles there are in the universe.
So, it's a big number, right?
Way bigger than one.
I have no concept of how big this number actually is, and I've looked at it a lot. Okay, it's a big number. So we can compare it to a
That's
few
the
things.
national debt.
So think about it this way: if you take all the grains of sand on all the beaches on Earth, and you take one grain and you paint it red, and then you put it back in a random spot, and then you take a guy and you blindfold him, and you kick him out of an airplane with a parachute, and the chances of him picking up that one piece of red sand would be about 1 in 10 to the 20th power. Okay? Which is only
One
that
in
big of a
10 to
number.
the 124th
It's
power.
not even close.
It's not even
That's
close.
insane.
Yeah. Now,
Conversation.
there's estimated when we look out into the universe, we can take plots with our telescopes and we can count the number of stars in the plots and inference that to approximately how many stars are there theoretically in the universe. This is about how many stars we figure there are. It's 3 to 10 to 23rd. So this is what I'm saying is these numbers are big numbers and they're not even close to the concept of how big of a number the randomness is. So Psalms 147, 4-5 says, He counts the number of the stars. He gives name to all of them. Great is our Lord, and abundant in strength. His understanding is infinite. And Isaiah 40:12, Who has measured the waters in the hollow of his hand and measured out heaven with a span and known the dust of the earth in a measure and weighed the mountains in scales and the hills in a balance? Effectively, what all these do is paint a big picture of just how amazing God is and just how amazing his solar system is and how amazing his universe is and then how amazing the earth is and how amazing you are. Okay? Because the scale of complexity, and we'll talk about this a little bit next time, the scale of complexity inside your body, it's just as hard as all of this, okay? And that's each individual person. So the scale of this just points so much to the glory of the Lord.
One of the things I love about all the stuff you laid out tonight is it doesn't, tell me if I'm wrong, but this sounds like the chicken and egg thing in that the egg, when there's going to be a chicken, if the egg was thicker, there would never be any chickens because they wouldn't be able to peck out of
Couldn't
it.
get out.
If there was too much fluid inside the egg, it would drown. If there was not enough, it wouldn't grow enough to be able to peck its way out. Everything has to be perfectly working at the same time immediately, or else there's never a chicken for it, right?
It's all good.
Same thing with all of this. You're talking about all these intricate, complex pieces of a puzzle that you can't put in place one at a time and us be here, correct? It has to be a turnkey operation.
Correct. You can't say, "Oh, I figured out gravity. Now let's work
on something
centrifugal
else."
force."
No, it'll all happen at once.
It's got to work together. Yeah. And
it
it is such a finely tuned scale that it also has to be done by a being that understands all the rules.
Yeah.
And that's what's fascinating is we as human beings like to think we are very, very smart. And we are the smartest thing we know, really, because we can look at the world around us and we can interact with it and understand a lot of things about it. But we don't even come close to understanding everything about it by any means. I mean, look at a simple thing like COVID. I mean, that in and of itself showed how little we know about a lot of things. It showed how much we know about a lot of things, but also just how incredibly little we actually know about one thing that impacts everybody quite a bit.
Yeah. And I know we got to get out of here, but why do we care about this? Why study this? Why know this? Well, just personally, I hope this creates a sense of awe and wonder of your God for you personally. But beyond that, what's the application for this? Is this any good to us in regards to how we relate to other people? Absolutely it is. Scientists who are atheists will agree with everything that Mike just shared. Those are indisputable facts to the best of our knowledge and ability to measure such things. They agree on this set of facts. They disagree on how those came into existence. So, what is the multiverse their best argument?
It's primarily the best argument.
Okay, here's their idea. Yes, all of those things are true, and yes, all of those things had to exist, or else we don't exist. But that doesn't mean there was an intelligent designer. That means that randomly over and over and over and over and over who knows how many trillions of years or whatever, the universe kept trying to become this and imploding and it not working, and it finally just hit it right.
And there's also
But then it didn't implode again after that?
the construct of multiverse is also deeper than that, because it also there are multiple universes out there
Right.
Simultaneously in that, and that we just happen to live in the one that got all these rules right. Now what they'll say is, okay, obviously all these things are important because we're here. So obviously that's important, and obviously it happened, so duh, it can happen, is what they say. That's effectively what happens. And they'll say, well, in alternate universes, it didn't happen the same way. Maybe they had a little more gravity, and it kind of collapsed and stuff like that. And then, maybe this little factor was off and that little factor off. We just happen to live in the one where it's all dialed in just right. Thus, obviously it can happen.
Here's the best thing I heard all day. This science guy that has a podcast was explaining why it doesn't immediately point to intelligent design, that there could be other ways that this happened. And he said, I reject that intelligent design thing. He said, Aquinas and Paley, the guy that found the watch and kind of gave us this illustration to start with, those guys had a theocracy background. They had a religious background, so they perceived it that way, and I see how they got there, but that's not observable, and I'm a scientist. And so I can't just accept that. Then he went on to explain this multiverse concept.
I thought you couldn't observe that.
Which is by definition unobservable.
Now,
That's just as much of a faith as anything.
Absolutely. And that's what you need to know. That's what you need to understand. Professing to be wise, they make themselves fools. Because what is able to be known of God
Can be done.
Atheism inherently is a religion.
Absolutely.
It has to be, because there's so much faith involved in what they're doing.
Yep.
He's got faith in something.
That's right.
You just need to help them point it to the right thing.
Varying shows how the universe is providing this. Like, the universe is the entity.
Yep, that's right.
If you're saying that the universe took time and figured it out, well, the universe is the entity.
That's right.
But it's right. Figure it out.
Which that lends into the cosmological argument.
Right.
Because something had to be. And here's the thing. So we can argue case in points of how, whether or not God is still here and active and stuff like that. These aren't things that settle that argument in that regard. It's a different aspect of discipleship and things like that. But this is the groundwork for, hey, there was a designer. Somebody put it into motion. How do you explain that? Okay?
Yeah.
And if we get, to me, if we can get that far, okay, because as long as you can say, hey, yeah, there was God, and God created the universe, everything else is easy. I think the greatest miracle is the first 4 words of the Bible.
Absolutely.
In the beginning, God.
Yep.
Bam. Because if you can take that and own it, and believe in those 4 words, everything else is super easy.
And that's the hurdle for a lot of people, because they can't even approach the idea that.
So this helps me get to those 4 words, and help people get into those 4 words from that.
That's why God started the book that way.
Yeah, exactly.
He's like, look, this is simple. In the beginning, me.
Are you saying he designed the book?
Because effectively, that's all you
really need to know.
That's all you really need to know. Bam!
Because if I was in the beginning, everything else.
Yeah, it's like if they will just start the book, they will get everything they need to know. If I can hold your attention for 5 seconds.
First 4 words.
Hey, folks who are atheistic scientists who are turning their faith towards multiverses and all this other made up stuff, they're deceived by the God of this age.
Mm-hmm.
Don't make fun of them. Pray for them.
Very much so.
If you end up in a conversation with one, don't ridicule them. Desire that they be saved and speak the truth in love.
Exactly.
It's not about winning an argument.
It's a love everybody else issue.
That's right. Pray that.
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for allowing us to come together this evening to discover just your glory magnified throughout the universe, Lord, and just to speak of these big, large, heady things, Lord, and that we've thrown out there, Lord, and that the individual details aren't even what matters here, but the fact that you paid attention to all these details, that's what matters.
Yep.
Lord, we just pray that you will continually show yourself to us through this study, Lord, that you'll continually allow us to have the opportunity to interact with those around us that don't cling to you, Lord, those that don't understand who you are, those that misunderstand who our God is, those that don't know who Jesus is, those that are angry about Jesus. Yeah. Lord, we pray for an opportunity to whisper in the ears of these people, Lord, to talk to them about the first 4 words and how magnificently beautiful you are. And how you are what hold us together. How you are what allows us to breathe.
Yes.
How you are what allows us to stand on this earth. And how you died for us. And how you want to be with us for eternity. And how you made all this possible.
Yeah.
Lord, I pray that all shall know that we are here for you in your glory. In the most holy name of Jesus Christ, I pray. Amen.
Amen. Hey, the other change, I don't know, we failed tonight, I get it.
I didn't do anything.
I get it. Not his fault, mine. Okay. But the other change that we're going to make, we're moving immediately into the prayer meeting. There's kind of, this little intermission has been created there, and we don't